Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. This will be review number 12 or so from this brewery, and these guys were actually one of my local breweries in Aberdeen when I was studying chemistry up there, although they started quite late into my tenure actually. So yeah, definitely going to be nice to return to these guys once again, and the beer we're having a look at today is one that I have tried before. I know it's a good beer, but I think it's going to be really interesting to do a solo review of this one. So for this review then, as I said, we are going to head up towards the northeast of Scotland to the city of Aberdeen, Dyce just to the northwest of the city to be specific, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Fierce Beer. So this one is the Barrel Aged Imperial Cafe Racer. It comes in at 9% ABV, and this one is a Barrel Aged Imperial Porter. So yeah, curious to see again how this beer turns out. I have had this one before, as I said. I reviewed this beer with my good friend Thomas from Thomas Open Beer Reviews over in the Netherlands, and you know, it was really nice to film that with that one with him actually. I think we put that video on his channel if I remember correctly. But yeah, this one I know is a beautiful beer, and I think it'll be nice to kind of have a go at this one again. I wanted to do another Fierce review before I headed back to Sweden, and then this one I found on the House of Trembling Madness. So I just kind of thought, well, why not? But you know, these guys, when it comes to Fierce beer, if people ask me about these guys, I would always think about, you know, the kind of big fruity sours or these big heavy dark beers. Actually, those are the two areas I think that Fierce beer really shine, although in fairness I did have a very nice New England IPA from these guys that I was impressed with, so I think I need to look into that style from these guys a little bit more the next time I get back to Scotland, probably in September or so. But yeah, I want to review the rest of the Shift beers, because there's quite a few beers released as part of that kind of Shift series that they have, if you can call it that, so I will see about reviewing those the next time I come home, but hopefully there's another few really interesting big dark beers from these guys as well. But yeah, always nice to return to Fierce beer, and they've always got some interesting stuff. So when it comes to Scottish breweries, and if you like your dark beers, then this is a brewery that you definitely need to check out. But yeah, excited for this one once again, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So let's go for it. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Fierce Beer before, and there will no doubt be more added to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefectures, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. Not as regularly as I would like right enough, but quite regularly recently, because I've been enjoying a bit of time at home in the motherland. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Fierce Beer. So Fierce Beer, as I've told you already, are based in Dyce, just to the northwest of the city of Aberdeen in the northeast of Scotland, where I used to study chemistry. Had a great couple of years up there. But these guys began the life as the kind of homebrewing experiments of David Grant, who worked for many years in the oil industry. So he'd been homebrewing since March of 2013, and after hosting a beer and food pairing dinner in May of 2015, his beer received rave reviews, and he decided after this, having got such good feedback, that he was going to go for it, turn professional and start his own company. But David is joined at the brewery by Dave McGarry, who also worked in the oil industry for a number of years, but he used his redundancy package to put himself on a brewing course at Brew Lab down in Sunderland in the northeast of England. Quite a popular route actually for brewers to kind of get into the kind of craft beer scene, if you like. You know, it's usually either Brew Lab or it's the Heriot Watt Brewing and Distilling Programme. You know, there's a lot of craft breweries are started on the back of that. But in April of 2016, they moved into their brewery in the Kirkhill Industrial Estate in Dyce, right next to the airport, to the northwest of Aberdeen, and at the moment these guys can brew around 800,000 litres of beer per year. So they started carrying their beers in early 2018, and they now have their own bar on Ship Row in Aberdeen, which is called the Fierce Bar, and they apparently want to move the brewery to a kind of more central location in Aberdeen to have a big kind of city and restaurant and stuff, so it'll be interesting to see how that plan progresses over the next little while. There is one site that I can think of that's a former factory that might work very nicely for them, but I'm sure they will, they will sort that out at some stage. It would be quite cool to see actually how they manage to do that, if they can go for it. But yeah, as I say, they're brewing around 800,000 litres per year in their current facility. But in May of 2019 they opened a new bar on Rose Street in Edinburgh, and they've also got one down in Manchester in England these days as well. But as of January 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 140 different types of beer. As I said, the things that they're most well known for, or most revered for I guess we could say, are these big dark beers with the barrel aging and stuff, and also the kind of big fruity sours. But they're also producing a bit of gin these days as well actually, which seems to be going down quite well. I need to ask my sister if she's tried any of the fierce gins actually, because you know, she's quite into those. She likes trying gin from lots of different places. But yeah, as I say, these guys, I've had some very good beer from them over the years, and I always look out for something new from them when I make it home each time. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Fierce Beer for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's leave it at that then and get on with the tasting. So this beer, as I mentioned to you earlier, is a bourbon barrel aged Imperial porter. This one, it's aged in bourbon barrels for 9 months, and it's got espresso coffee and Madagascan vanilla in it. So yeah, as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty typical of what you expect of one of the barrel aged beers from Fierce. You'll see this on quite a lot of their different beers, but there you can see the kind of mad hophead thing. That is the symbol of Fierce Beer, of course. But yeah, 9% Imperial Porter, this one. This is a 440ml can, and I think, again, I must have paid about £7 or something like that for this, or maybe £6.50, I can't quite remember. But I bought this beer at the House of Trembling Madness in York, through their web shop. It's an awesome beer shop if you can get there physically. I was there once back in 2017, and I've been told that it's only gotten better over the years. But otherwise, if you're interested in English beers, then you can check out their web shop, one of the best value ones in England apparently, according to the English beer tubers. But they've also got a fair selection of Scottish stuff as well, you know, Fierce, New Barns, some Tempest, and you know, a good few things from Vault City and stuff like that as well. I think they've got quite a bit of overtone down there now as well. But yeah, 440ml can. This one, I think we paid about £6.50 for this, so that translates roughly to about €7.50, probably about $8, $8.25 American, and then, you know, about 75 Swedish kroners, something like that for those of you watching over there. But yeah, this one I think should be very nice. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Yes. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass, and I mean, just look at this. I remember this beer being a big kind of silky monster of a thing, and it's certainly living up to that expectation once again. But yeah, like I said, I reviewed this beer a few months back in Winschoten, if I'm pronouncing that rightly, in the Netherlands, with my good friend Thomas Hoendam, who runs the channel Thomas Opent Beer Reviews, and we had real fun reviewing this one actually. We saw that he had a Scottish beer, so we're like, yeah, we need to review that together, and we did, and it was great. So I know that this is an awesome beer, but as I say, very curious to do a kind of solo review of it and see what I think, because you know, the power of suggestion actually can do quite a few things when it comes to beers actually. So it's always cool, it's always great that the filming these collaboration reviews is really fun, because you start to pick up things from each other, obviously, as well. But yeah, it's always nice to kind of do a solo review and kind of gather your own thoughts on it as well. So I probably will watch both of these back and do a bit of a comparison and things, and see if I still say the same things as I said with Thomas. But yeah, as you can see and as you'd expect from a big Imperial Porter like this one has basically poured a very dark kind of ebony colour. That beer is as black as night. So you can see that there is about, when we poured this beer, it had maybe about a quarter, if you were lucky, finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium beige head. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look very nice. That head is faded away to pretty much nothing other than a kind of little foamy ring around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, it certainly looks very nice and looks the part for an Imperial Porter. So yeah, let's take a look at the aroma of this one then and see how we got on, but nothing really surprising about this beer when it comes to when you think about what style it is. So let's go for it. That does smell very nice. First impression of this one is you've got to take the aroma in a little bit more deeply to get those kind of bourbon barrel aged notes, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's definitely there. The vanilla, I think, is really nice in this as well. But you can smell. I think you can smell straight away with this one. You can tell straight away with this that it's not a stout. You know, I've always found sometimes with the Imperial porters, it's a bit difficult to kind of distinguish them from stouts if you were to do it blindly without knowing what it is. But yeah, this one you can definitely smell that this beer is not quite as thick and kind of creamy and things as you would expect from a stout. Remember, the main difference between a porter and a stout, generally speaking, is the yeast. They use different yeast strains for these things. The porter is essentially the English equivalent of the German Schwarzbier, although the German Schwarzbier is a lager, of course, and the English porter, the London porter, whatever you want to call it, Baltic porter, is an ale. So yeah, but you can smell, I think, and remember as well, the barrel aging is going to thin out both the kind of mouthfeel and you know, the aromas and things like that out of these beers. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one, I think, is absolutely lovely. I really like how everything in this beer kind of pieces together. So yeah, it's pretty damn nice, I have to say. So yeah, let's try and break that down a little bit more. So as I say, you can smell that lovely big kind of smooth oaky backbone to this beer. There's definitely a little bit of that, you do get quite a little bit of that kind of bourbon brown sugar sort of thing. As I've said to you in reviews before, I find that the American bourbons are distinctly sweeter than Scotch whiskies, which tend to be a little bit more kind of roasty and toasty. So yeah, you definitely get that kind of almost nearly syrupy, kind of maple syrupy type thing from the bourbon in this, and those two elements, the woodiness and the bourbon, are sort of forming the backbone of this beer. You do get a good hint of vanilla out of this one as well, I have to say. There's a lovely big hint of vanilla coming out of this beer. But yeah, the aroma to the malty kind of barrel aging backbone here is very nice. You start to get a few nutty elements out of it as well. You can smell there's a lot of sweet kind of chocolate to this one actually as well. I would say, you know, a sort of 60-70% cocoa chocolate, although maybe a little bit less. I think the vanilla actually makes it seem as if it's maybe a little bit more milky as well. So maybe 50% cocoa is what I would go with on this one. But the more you smell of it, you do get a little bit of dryness from the chocolate as well, which is quite interesting. So yeah, there's definitely a wee bit of a kind of dryness to the chocolate, and there a little bit of a kind of almost toastiness actually. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this beer, I think, on the malty and kind of barrel aging side of this beer is really nice. But yeah, lovely kind of smooth vanilla out of it. So yeah, lovely kind of smooth vanilla. You've got a nice kind of you know, the brown sugars that you get with this beer, I think, are really very solid actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in terms of its maltiness, to be honest with you. I don't think you get all that much coffee out of this one. I think you know, you get a little bit of the kind of coffee out of it, but in fairness, it's espresso coffee rather than being straight up coffee beans. As I've told you in videos before, I absolutely love coffee beans as an adjunct in beer. You know, they're so complex. You know, from different regions in the world, you're going to get different water compositions, different soil compositions, so that's going to affect your bean. And remember, it's all about the MASL, the MASL, so the metres above sea level at which your coffee is grown, because the higher you grow it, basically, the more kind of floral, aromatic, fruity kind of flavours you get out of it. But when it comes to the espresso coffee, I think it's very kind of straight up. You do get quite a bit of earthiness out of it. There's a little bit of aromaticity in there as well, and perhaps just a wee kind of hint of you know, a little hint of red fruit, and you can just smell the coffee notes in this one. I would describe them as being quite aromatic. They come out right kind of at the back of the nose almost. So the coffee note in this beer, I think, goes together really well. But I think you have to really take the aroma in quite deeply, I think, to get the coffee to really show its full banner, if you like, to show its full colours, or whatever you want to say. So yeah, it's a really solid beer, this, in terms of its aroma. And I think, as I said, Thomas and I spent a good little bit of time on the aroma of this one. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, let's have a little look at that. But remember, at 9 months, you know, with 9 months barrel aging, quite a bit of the hops will have dropped out of this one. But yeah, you do get a good little bit. I still get a little bit of earthiness with this one. You can get a wee bit of floral aromaticity from the hops as well, and a bit of a kind of grassiness. There's a wee tiny touch of zest to the grassiness in this beer as well, which is quite interesting. But yeah, the sort of that little bit of green that this beer has is really good. I mean, obviously you can get this beer for a while, age it a little bit, and the hops are going to drop out even further. But yeah, the green side of the beer in this is very, very nice. So yeah, lovely stuff. On the fruity side of things, I think this one, the fruits come across as quite oily in this beer for me. Definitely a lovely kind of oily blackcurrant note. I think, well, sorry, I should say more blackberry. Blackberry I've always found is a little bit more oily, but underneath you get a bit of blackcurrant, you get a wee bit of a kind of figgy kind of note in there, and I think there's a kind of juicy, rounded kind of plum note to this beer as well. So yeah, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma. This one, I think it's very, very nice. Thomas agreed with me at the time we reviewed this beer together, but let's have a taste of this one then and just see how we get on. So yeah, nice to try this beer once again. So this one is the barrel aged Imperial Cafe Racer, a 9% Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels for 9 months with espresso coffee and Madagascar vanilla. I know this beer is going to be pretty damn good, so let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's lovely. Its first impression of this one again to try it is it's got a real kind of slickness to it, and it feels like quite a thick porter, to be honest with you. It maintains the kind of slickness that you expect from this style, but it does at the same time feel like it's got a lot of body to it. So yeah, I can appreciate this one actually as well. And remember, as I said, when you barrel age beers, it tends to take the mouthfeel down a little bit. It does tend to thin them out a little bit, but yeah, in this one, this really does feel like it's got quite a bit of body to it. But yeah, that is a lovely beer for sure. So yeah, the question is, where do we start with this? So yeah, straight away with this beer, you can feel that nice sort of woody quality just kind of blankets in the middle of your palate there, and it does spread forward towards the front part of your tongue and into the back part of your tongue there as well, and it does dry out a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, the woody barrel aging qualities are definitely the backbone of this beer. It feels a little bit boozier than I remember it feeling as well, actually. But yeah, it's got a lovely body to it, and it does just come across as a wee bit kind of drier in its woody notes than I remember as well. Like, I can really feel in that middle third of your palate there, you can feel just some of the dryness of the wood there, and it just almost gets a little bit spicy or something like that in that middle third of your palate as well, with the kind of woody notes. So yeah, I like that about this one for sure. So yeah, let's break this down then. So let's focus on the middle third of the palate. And so like I said earlier, you've got that nice kind of woody quality that just blankets the middle of your palate. The further that you go into the aftertaste, it develops a little bit of a kind of spicy dryness almost. And as you move towards the kind of front of that middle third of your tongue, if you go to the very centre of your palate, then just move forward, you start to get more kind of vanilla out of the beer, which is quite nice. You know, you get a little nutty kind of quality out of it as well. So the front half of that middle third of your palate, good little bit of vanilla quality to it, and then just on either side of that, there's a wee bit of a kind of nutty sort of thing coming out as well. But you feel the woody dryness just pushing its way out of this beer the further that you go into the aftertaste. On the back third of your palate, I think that's where most of the kind of cocoa qualities of this beer are kind of concentrated, and it does come across as a little bit darker in the flavour, I think, than it does in the aroma, in fairness. So bear that in mind. So I think when the liquid's on your tongue, yeah, you're getting a sort of 40-50% cocoa chocolate out of the beer. But as you progress into the aftertaste, on that back half of that middle third of your palate, you get more of a kind of slightly oily and darker chocolate. You do get a little bit of a kind of almost charred chocolate out of the beer. So maybe you could say it's a 60 or 70% cocoa chocolate. But in the very centre of your palate, there's a nice little bit of you do get a nice little bit of a kind of almost molassesy, oily kind of thing out of this beer, which is quite nice, and that just sits there. But the other thing is, I've described the layers of this beer, I think, fairly well there, but the thing that we haven't really mentioned, because this beer, the thing that I'm getting from this beer this time is that it comes across as a little bit drier. It does feel a little bit drier and slightly spicier in its woody tones. than I remember it doing. And I mean, it may well be that this has been aged for a slightly longer time or something like that compared to the one that Thomas and I drank. I honestly don't know. Does it have a... It says that this one... It says the best before is the 11th of December 2022. So I'm not sure how long Fierce would recommend that their beer stay in the can. I mean, I don't know when this one was canned. I'd like to have a canned on and a best before date on these beers. But this one, this particular version comes across as a little bit drier and almost kind of slightly more woody and spicy, if you like, than I remember the other one. And the bourbon sugars, the other thing I should say about this beer is that on that woody note, the bourbon sugars, I think, take a little bit of time to kind of come out of this beer. So you get that really, you do get that kind of, it's almost like a kind of glazing. You can feel the bourbon sugars just coming out in the middle of the palate and just glazing over the other thing. So it's a really interesting point to make about this beer for sure. Actually, it's quite quirky in that sense, definitely. But yeah, that middle third of your palate is where a lot of the complexity of this beer is. But yeah, if you go to the back of that middle third of your palate, on the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you do get a wee bit of a kind of well-fired, toasty, bread crusty sort of thing there. There is just a little bit more bitterness in that border region. But then when you go into the back of the palate there, you can feel there is a little bit more of a slight kind of dryness and bread crusty type quality on that back third of your palate. The back third of your palate is distinctly more kind of dry and slightly bitter and things like that. Although in fairness, it does develop a smoothness again the further that you go into the aftertaste. The whole beer across the middle third and back third of your palate has a bit of slickness, but yeah, that back third of your palate, that's definitely where the more kind of roasty parts are coming out of the beer. That kind of roasty, bread crusty sort of thing. So yeah, the way that everything kind of goes together in this one, in the malty side, is quite interesting as well. I don't remember it being quite as dry and sort of spicy, if you like, as the one that I had with Thomas. I remember it being really slick and really kind of smooth, actually. But you know, your palate changes all the time with all the different beers that you drink, so it could just be the evolution of my palate, or it could be a little bit of a change in the beer in the ages. I think we probably checked in the video. What the canning date and stuff like that was of the one that we had, but I didn't really want to kind of re-watch it and influence what I was going to say about the beer this time, to be honest with you, because I wanted this to be a straight up review, because I couldn't particularly remember what it was like, to be honest. But yeah, it's a very slick and very kind of smooth and oily porter, but it's got a little bit of dryness and slight spiciness to it as well, to be honest. But yeah, I really like how everything goes together with this beer. Really, really nice. I think that covers the malty and kind of barrel aging-y side of this beer quite well. So yeah, the wood, the kind of brown sugars in there, the vanilla, the kind of more roasty kind of black malty notes there. The thing we haven't mentioned yet is the coffee, of course. So the coffee. I think the coffee kind of comes out in that sort of border region. It kind of sits, so you've got that thicker sort of kind of more bread crusty note on the back third of your palate. The thickness of the beer is definitely a bit thicker on that back third of your palate, but then as you move into the middle third of your palate, you can feel the thickness just drops away in that border region, kind of goes like that. The coffee sort of fills the gap in there, and the coffee for me, it has a good level of aromaticity to it, but you get a nice kind of slightly well-fired, roasty type quality out of it as well. As I say, the whole beer for me strikes me as being more kind of bitter and dark than I remember it being. But yeah, the coffee kind of sits there on that border region, I think, between the middle and back third of your palate. But yeah, it's very, very nice in that sense. It's a really quirky beer. Well, I suppose maybe quirky is not the right word. It's just a really well done beer, this one. I think that's fair to say. It's not doing anything unusual for a barrel-aged Imperial porter, to be honest with you, but it certainly works. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a good little bit of earthiness coming out of the beer, and as you move further forward, that earthiness does spread forward a little bit, and then as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a little bit of floral aromaticity to it. Then around the very front curve of the tongue, there's a nice kind of grassy quality to the beer, and it's almost just got a little touch of zestiness to it. Remember, as you age this beer, the hoppy qualities are kind of going to drop out a little bit, but you know, when it's been bourbon barrel aged for 9 months, quite a bit of them, or quite a significant part of them, will have dropped out so far already. So yeah, it's it's definitely interesting for sure. It's interesting how you know, your opinion of a beer. Well, I wouldn't say my opinion of this beer has changed, but I would say it's just interesting how you can pick up slightly different flavours when you try a beer sort of more than once. But yeah, hoppy side of the beer is quite nice as well, actually. Generally speaking, I think the beer feels a little bit more boozy than I remember it being as well. So yeah, another interesting point there. Maybe it does mellow out a little bit more over time, who knows. But yeah, let's focus on the front third of your palate then, and the kind of fruity side of the beer. So as I always say, on that front third of your palate, you get a nice kind of oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So on that kind of border region between the middle and front third of your palate, you get a little bit of a cakey sort of thing, like that well-fired brownie that you get from the edge. You know, that little edge you get that's stuck to the bacon tray. It's like that. I often use that kind of descriptor, if you like. But yeah, you get quite a bit of that coming out of this one for sure, which is quite nice. So as you go, it's almost as you go forward into that middle third of your palate, and the back of that kind of front third of your palate, you get a little bit of an almost Christmas puddingy type thing, but there's lots of juicy plum in there, maybe a little bit of cherry or something like that. But then as you move further forward, you can feel some of the dryness. There is a good bit of dryness underneath the fruity part of this beer, but as you move further forward, you start to get the figgy notes. There's maybe a wee bit of raisin in there as well. The beer does have a little bit of a raisiny sharpness. Then as you reach the kind of front half of that front third of your tongue, that's when you start to get the black currants, and you start to get, you know, you get the juicier blackcurrant underneath, and then you get the more oily blackberry on top, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of quirky stuff going on in this beer on the fruity side of things. I really like the fruity side of this beer, actually. But it's just interesting, as I say, you try the same beer, maybe, I think that must have been about 4 months ago, and it just comes across quite a bit differently, just the spiciness and some of the dryness and stuff. But as I say, it might be different batches. I honestly can't quite remember what the batch that Thomas had, but I think he'd had his can for quite a wee while, so maybe his had aged a little bit more. So maybe this is one that you want to get a hold of and just let it mellow out a little bit. So yeah, bear that in mind. But yeah, it is just really nice, this one, absolutely. It just grows on me, and I think the fruits come across as quite smooth in a lot of ways, but there's a little bit of oiliness in there and just a little bit of wetness too. But I mean, you can't take it away from this. It's a beautiful beer. And I wonder if the version I'm getting is a little bit young, and that's why it has a good bit more dryness to it. So yeah, maybe as you age this beer a little bit more, it kind of smoothens out and mellows out. And I do suspect, actually, that Thomas's beer that he had, Thomas's Imperial Cafe Racer, was more just being allowed to mellow out a little bit more than this one has. But even when it's a bit fresher like this, it's still a damn solid beer. So thumbs up to Fierce Beer once again in this one. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, what would we say about this? So yeah, I'd say kind of top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth in this one. It's got a really kind of slick mouthfeel. A little bit of oily character, but like I say, very kind of slick in a lot of ways. But yeah, the barrel aging, you can tell, you know, an Imperial Porter. Porters are always kind of a bit lighter in their mouthfeels, but an Imperial Porter, you would expect a little bit more thickness out of this, but you can feel that the barrel aging has sort of just given the beer that slickness and that kind of infused vibe that the whole beer has. So yeah, it's really interesting from the mouthfeel perspective for this. In terms of hoppy bitterness and things, what would we say about this beer? I think this beer's got to have, you know, maybe about a 60 IBU count, somewhere like that. Because you do get a bit of dryness out of the wood, like I said, you get a bit of spiciness in there as well. I don't know whether that should be counted as part of the IBUs. But yeah, there's a good little bit of hoppy bitterness still in this one. That's going to drop away, of course, the longer that you age this beer. And then you've got, you know, the kind of, you know, you get a kind of, you get a chocolatey, kind of powdery note out of this one as well. I think we did mention the chocolate a little bit earlier on, but the chocolate, I think, really dries out again the further that you go into the aftertaste. This beer develops a lot of dryness and kind of spiciness in the malty side of this beer. And as I say, it just strikes me as being a lot drier and a lot more kind of almost like spicy, if you like, compared to what I remember it being. It's a lot more dry and bitter, definitely, but that certainly doesn't put me off. It just shows me another side to this beer, and I suspect it's maybe this particular batch is a bit younger than the one that Thomas had. So yeah, the malty and barrel aging side of this beer is quite interesting. There is a bit of smoothness in there, but it's a bit dry. You get some nice kind of slick brown sugars, good bit of chocolate. It's a really interesting combination of things going on in this particular beer, actually, from the malty side of things. But yeah, a little bit of bitterness, as I say, about 50 or 60 IBUs. Then the fruits, I think, are where this one really shines. There's a wee bit of dryness to the fruits, but then a big oiliness and a little bit of juiciness later on. But yeah, nothing else you can say about this beer other than that it's beautifully done. But you know, when it comes to these big, dark, heavy beers, we know that Fierce are very, very capable in this particular niche, if you like, in that particular niche of the craft beer market. But yeah, I think that's a good place to kind of sign off on this one. So still a beautiful, beautiful beer, but definitely a bit more bitter and kind of slightly spicy than I remember it being. But you know, awesome, awesome stuff, and really nice to sit down and do a sort of solo review of this one for you here. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. If you want to see another opinion on this, of course, you can look at all my fellow beer tubers, but you can check out mine and Thomas's collaboration review. I should say Thomas and my beer review that we did of this one. I think that's on Thomas's channel, so I'll try to remember to put the link to that in the video description below. But this was an awesome beer to review for you once again, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. But yeah, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fierce Beer. This one was the Bourbon Barrel Aged Imperial Cafe Racer, coming in at 9% ABV, an Imperial Porter, just beautifully executed once again. And this is one that you can get and age for a little bit. And to be honest, I would recommend you buy one of these and maybe age it for like a year or something like that. I think the main difference between this one and Thomas's one was the kind of level of sort of aging, if you like. But a lovely beer, a great brewery in Scotland, and one of the ones that I would always recommend people check out if they're interested in Scottish craft beer. So yeah, the Imperial Cafe Racer. The Barrel Aged Imperial Cafe Racer, coming in at 9% ABV, an Imperial Porter aged in bourbon barrels for 9 months with espresso coffee and Madagascan vanilla. Just beautifully done, and I think it works very well. But yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on the beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fierce Beer as well, and we will return to these guys at some point soon. But thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and catch you guys on the next review.